guys, it's Miss Richardson here. As you guys know, I can't be with you today because I've broken my leg, but the show needs to keep going on and you guys need to learn how to write an essay. So I'm going to start teaching you via these little videos how to plan to write an essay. So this is just the first stage of writing the essay, okay? And there's 4 steps. Okay, so let's get going. First off, the first thing that you need to do is you need to read the question carefully. So when you are writing an essay, you'll receive an essay question. Okay, and that's what you have to talk about in your essay. Okay, so the first thing that you should do is read your question really carefully and start to kind of pull it apart. So the question that we're going to work with in this example is, does Lois Lowry, so our author, does Lois Lowry endorse the idea of sameness? What does the giver teach its readers about the concept of sameness? Okay, so there are a few things that we need to pull apart. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is this word endorse. Now, the word endorse means to give approval for something, okay? So the question's asking, does Lois Lowry approve of the idea of sameness? Okay, does she think it's good? Okay, and then the second part of the question asks, what does the giver teach its readers about the concept, the idea of sameness? Okay, so when we pull apart a question, we do this thing, sorry, just swapping things around, called looking for what we call keywords. Now, keywords are important words in an essay question that need to be addressed or talked about. Okay, so in this question, what are some of our keywords? Well, I would say endorse. That's an important word. Oop, okay. Don't use yellow highlighter. It does not work. Let me just change that back. Okay, why don't I use something else? Why don't I change the color of it? What about red? Red's a good color. That's easy to see. There we go. Red. Okay. Does Lois Lowry endorse the idea of sameness? Okay, so I think the word endorse is important, and I think obviously that word sameness is important. Okay. Let's put that one in red. What does the giver teach its readers? Okay, I think teach is probably important. So what does the text teach us about sameness? Okay. So there's always 2 questions in there, isn't there? So the first question is, oh, don't mind me. So the first question is about, like, does she think that sameness is good? And then the second question is about, like, what do we learn about sameness, right? Okay, so here are our keywords. So our keywords are in red. I'll try and make that in red too so it matches all together. There we go. Okay, so they're our keywords. They're the words that we have to address. And the reason we highlight our keywords is so that we can make sure that we are understanding the question, that we know exactly what the question's asking us and what is important in the question. Okay, so that is step 1. Ready for step 2? Step 2. Okay, work out what your answer is. So we know what the question is now. Okay. Does Lois Lowry endorse sameness, and what does it teach us about sameness? That's the question. Now we need to work out what our answer is. Okay, and an answer is what we call a contention. Okay, it's a fancy English word. We say, what is your contention? Okay, in your contention, you should try and use the keywords, so those words that we were looking at back here, use those words from the question to help shape your answer. That way you know that you are clearly answering it. So you try and use those keywords to make sure that you are answering the question, because the number one rule in essay writing is answer the question. Okay, so let's have a look. Okay, so we've got the question here. Does Lois Lowry endorse the idea of sameness? What does the giver teach its readers about the concept of sameness? And we said the keywords were endorse, sameness, we said was a keyword. Teach was a keyword. And then again with sameness. Okay, so this is the contention that I came up with. Okay, so this is my contention. I'll put that in yellow just so that we're going with my whole colour coding business. Okay, so contention. So I came up with my answer to the question, to that question was no. Lois Lowry does not endorse sameness. Okay, so there's the first part of the question. Can you see how I've answered the first part? And then, now I'm going to talk about the second part. She teaches her readers, see I'm using that word, teaches her readers that it has more negative effects on the community than positives. Okay, so can you see how I'm answering the question? So I've got, with the keywords, I've got two keywords there. Sorry. So, does not endorse sameness. Highlight that in red. And then the word teaches. And then obviously what she teaches them. Okay, so that's how I've kind of made sure that I am sticking to that question, like glue. Does that make sense? So this is one area where it's important that you are kind of using the language that's in the question. Okay, so that is step 2. Tick. Okay, ready for step 3? Step 3. So we've got our question, we've got our contention. Now what we need is arguments. So, what are arguments for an essay? Your arguments are the reasons why your contention is correct. Okay? So they are the reasons. So your contention is the answer to the question, and your arguments are the reasons. Okay? So, if my contention... Sorry, I'm just kind of highlighting for those kind of visual kids out there. Oh, gosh. Okay, that's hard to read, isn't it? Let's try and pick a yellow that's a little easier to read. That's not great, but it'll do. So if my contention is, no, Lowry does not endorse sameness, she teaches her readers that it has more negative effects on the community than positives, then my reasons, okay, my arguments could be something like this. So what we try and do with essays is have 3 arguments for a contention. So 3 reasons why you're right, because if you can give 1 reason, it's not super convincing. If you can give 2 reasons, then you're more convincing. If you can give 3 reasons, then you're pretty convincing. You know, it's a bit like, you know, when you're arguing with your mum, maybe you want to like go to a party or something, and, you know, your contention is, I want to go to a party. I should be allowed to go to the party. That's the contention. Then your arguments are, 1, I should be allowed to go to the party because everyone else is going. 2, I should be allowed to go to the party because it's my friend Tim's birthday and I shouldn't let my friend down. And maybe the third argument, or the third reason why you should be allowed to go to the party is because Tim's parents are going to be there, so everyone's going to be safe. Okay? Same with arguing in an essay. You need kind of 3 good reasons. Okay, so here are my reasons for the question that we had. So if you need a reminder for the question that we had, here we go. Does Lois Lowry endorse the idea of sameness? What does the giver teach its reader about the concept of sameness? And I said, no, she doesn't endorse sameness, and she teaches them that it has more negative effects than positive. So my reasons are all going to be about these negative effects. Okay, so my first reason I came up with was the reason that we know that Lowry thinks that there is more negatives that come out of sameness than positives was, the first one I was like, oh, well, to ensure sameness, people have to sacrifice things that make the world beautiful, like music and colour. So that's kind of like one negative about sameness that we see. The second one that I'm giving, the second reason that I'm giving to say that no, she doesn't endorse sameness is that I'm saying that Lois Lowry also shows that sameness would mean that people are discouraged from doing things that make them special and unique, such as learning skills early, like the bike. You know, the bike riding, you're only allowed to learn how to ride a bike at 9, even though like lots of kids feel like that they're ready to do it earlier. Or late, like Gabe. That Gabe isn't ready to sleep alone yet. And, you know, they're not allowed to have things that make them different. Different, whether that is that you are advanced or whether you're further behind. But also even having quirks that make them unique. Like Asher is discouraged from being kind of so different from everybody else. So that's my second thing. So my first argument is about how they have to sacrifice things, and that shows us that sameness is not good because they have to sacrifice things that are beautiful. The second argument that I've got so far is that no, she doesn't endorse sameness because she shows us that like we would be discouraged from being special and unique. And then the third reason that I gave to say that no, Lois Lowry does not endorse sameness is that she also shows that when the concept of sameness is taken into human relationships, it means that the feeling of deep love that a person holds for their family would not be encouraged because it would mean a lack of sameness within their relationships. Therefore, Jonas's community live a life without love. So my third argument is really saying Lois Lowry does not endorse sameness because sameness would mean that there would be a lack of love in the world. So they're my three arguments. Now, just because these are the three arguments that I came up with, it doesn't mean that this is the answer. English isn't like maths, where like in maths you have like a particular answer, that this is the answer. It is 21, and if you didn't get 21, you're wrong. Okay, that's not how English works. English has this thing that like basically means like if you can justify your response and you can argue it well, then yeah, you can get the points. Okay, so if you were thinking about this question and came up with different reasons why that contention is correct, then that's okay. Okay, that's awesome, in fact. Okay, that's really good. Okay, so hopefully you understand how my arguments work. If not, go back, have another look. Okay, all right. Now we're moving on to step 4, the final step in planning our essay. Okay, so step 4. What we need to do in step 4 is to come up with evidence for each argument. So we've got those arguments, the reasons, the 1, 2, 3, those 3 reasons. Okay, so for each one of these, I now need to find evidence to prove that this is correct, that this statement is correct. Okay, so evidence can either be a quote, words taken directly from a text, so any words in the text. It doesn't have to be just like dialogue, something that one of the characters has said. It can be any of the words in the text. Or it could be an event or action that happens in the text that proves your point. Okay? What is important is that your evidence, whether that is a quote or an event, shows that your argument is correct. Okay, so you can't just use anything in the book. You have to use something that kind of proves your point. So, for instance, proves my point that sameness takes away beautiful things from the world. Okay, my quote or my event in the text has to actually prove that that is the case. Now, when you are taking words directly from the text, which is called a quote, you need to put it in inverted commas, and they look like this. So see these little kind of dinglings? They're like upside down commas. Yeah, see those? They are how you indicate that what you are writing is a quote. And when you write a quote, you have to write it exactly out as it's in the book. There are some tricks around this, but I'll show you those when we get to school because it's a little bit more complicated. But yeah, so it kind of has to be word. If you're putting it in quotation marks in these little inverted commas, it needs to be word for word correct. Okay, make sense? Happy? Good. All right. So let me give you an example of me finding some evidence for my argument. Okay, so what I've done is I've taken the first argument out of those, the list of arguments that I had before. So I had these 3 arguments. So I've taken the first one about music, like that they have to sacrifice things like colour. So I've said, so my argument is to ensure sameness, people had to sacrifice things that make the world beautiful, like colour and seasons. So I kind of changed it up. As I was writing it, I was kind of like, colour and music, yeah, are good, but I feel like I could say more about like how he changed like the seasons and stuff, but anyway, doesn't matter. Okay, so I've got 2 pieces of evidence here. Now, for each argument, I always like to have 2 pieces of evidence because, again, it's a bit like why we have multiple arguments, because the more ways that we can show that we're right, the more convincing we are. Like if I can only show one way that I'm right, then, well, am I very convincing? But if I can show like more than one, then I'm pretty convincing. Okay, so the first bit. The first piece of evidence I found was this one. And you'll notice with this, what I've done is I've given the event and I'm putting quotes in with the event. And that's the way that I would do it. I would try and do both a quote and an event at the same time. So talk about the event and then put the quote in while you're talking about it. So let me show you. I've said, when Jonas is discussing the importance of sameness with the giver, he asks about having choice and suggests that it would be nice if they could choose between things that were bright red or bright yellow. The giver suggests that this is not allowed because a person might make the wrong choice. Okay, can you see how this proves this? Yeah? How this is connected to this, that this shows that people are sacrificing things to make, sacrificing things that make the world beautiful in order to have sameness. Yeah? Cool. The other one that I came up with was this one, where it says, in the first happy memory Jonas receives, so that's the one where he is on the sled and he's like going down the hill and it's snowing, he realizes that the landscape is very different to theirs and asks, but what happened to those things, the snow and the rest of it? To which he is told by the giver that they had to be sacrificed in order for sameness to occur. Okay, again, can you see how I'm talking about how they have to sacrifice beautiful things in order to have sameness? So can you see how this evidence proves my argument? That's what I want. Okay, so I've got these 2 lovely pieces of evidence, and when I go to write my essay, then I have it there for me, ready to write. Okay. The other thing I want to show you is, can you see how I've used the quotation marks? So I used the word choose, that they used the word choose, and then I've got the quote, things that were bright red or bright yellow. Okay, those things, those bits are directly from the text. And then this bit, a person, and then we've got quotation marks, might make the wrong choice. Okay, so that's a quote. Okay, now you might have noticed down here that here I've actually got 3. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Right, the reason I have 3 is a little bit complicated. So this inverted comma tells me I'm writing a quote. Okay, that this is from a book. And then this one is actually from the text. So this is because this is all dialogue. This is something that has been said by a character. So I have to take it directly from the text, and so it has those two. So I've ended up having 3 quotation marks in a row. But that's okay. All right? You don't always have to do it. So if you're just taking one word or a bit of a phrase, then you don't need it. But if you're taking a whole bit of dialogue, then you will need to put it in. Okay? So that concludes me explaining how to write, how to plan an essay. What I'm going to get you guys to do now is in groups try and do this yourselves. So yeah, hopefully you go okay. Good luck! I'll see you soon. Bye!